Hello, 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 everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome back. We're going to be starting chapter 1 in our new book, our Let's Read segment, Beyond Religion by the Dalai Lama. So in the first video that I made, I read the introduction, and I wanted to say that after I uploaded the video and after I made the video, I thought about my comments on religion, and I really wanted to just say I hope that I did not offend anybody, and I did not mean to put religion down. I talked about my own personal experience and my own thoughts and feelings on organized religion versus having my own truths and beliefs, which are very God-centered, very centered around the saints and the angels and, of course, God. I just don't belong to or recognize that I belong to a specific religion, but I do think that religions are beautiful. There is truth to every religion, and if you have a religion that you are so faithful to, and it's what keeps you, I have no judgment at all. We all have our own truth, our own belief system, and I think that's what makes the world beautiful, is that we can accept and just love other people for the differences that they have, because it's what makes the world so unique. So I hope I did not offend anybody with that statement. I apologize wholly if I did. That was not the intention at all. So with that being said, I'm going to read the first half of chapter 1. Some of these chapters are longer than others, but there's also a lot of information to take in, and I realize that it can get overwhelming to read and to listen to. So I'm going to break most of these chapters up. There's a few that are shorter, but for the most part, I'm going to break them up into 2 sections. So we're going to read the first half of part 1, chapter 1, A New Vision of Secular Ethics. Chapter 1 is titled Rethinking Secularism, Inner Values in an Age of Science. I am a man of religion, but religion alone cannot answer all our problems. Not long ago, I attended a formal ceremony to mark the opening of a new Buddhist temple in Bihar, a particularly densely populated and poor part of northern India. The chief minister of Bihar, it's either Bihar or Bihar, of Bihar, an old friend of mine, made a fine speech in which he expressed his conviction that, with the blessings of the Buddha, the state of Bihar would now prosper. When my turn came to speak, I suggested, half-jokingly, that if Bihar's prosperity depended solely on the blessings of the Buddha, it really should have prospered a long time ago. After all, Bihar is home to the holiest site for Buddhists, Bodh Gaya, where the historical Buddha attained full enlightenment. For real change, we require more than the blessings of the Buddha, powerful though they may be, and more than prayer. We also need action, which will only come about through the able efforts of the chief minister and others like him. This is not to suggest that blessings and prayer are useless. In fact, I consider prayer to be of immediate psychological benefit. Immense psychological benefit, But we must accept that its tangible results are often hard to see. When it comes to obtaining certain direct results, it is clear that prayer cannot match the achievements of, for instance, modern science. When I was ill some years ago, it was certainly comforting to know that people were praying for me. But it was, I must admit, still more comforting to know that the hospital where I was being treated had the very latest equipment to deal with my condition. In light of our growing mastery over so many aspects of the physical world in the past 200 years or so, it is not surprising that many people today question whether we have any need for religion at all. Things which in the past were only dreamt about, the elimination of diseases, space travel, computers, have become reality through science. So it is not surprising that many have come to place all their hopes in science, and even to believe that happiness can be achieved by means of what material science can deliver. But while I can understand how science has undermined faith in some aspects of traditional religion, I see no reason why advances in science should have the same effect on the notion of inner or spiritual values. Indeed, the need for inner values is more pressing in this age of science than ever before. In the attempt to make a compelling case for inner values and ethical living in the age of science, it would be ideal to make that case in wholly scientific terms. Although it is not yet possible to do so purely on the basis of scientific research, I am confident that as time goes on, a more and more secure scientific case for the benefits of inner ethical values will gradually emerge. Of course, I am no scientist, and modern science was not a part of my formal education as a child. However, since coming into exile, I have done a lot of catching up. For more than 30 years now, I have held regular meetings with experts and researchers from many scientific fields, including physics, cosmology, biology, psychology, and especially of late, neuroscience. Contemplative traditions in all religions place great emphasis on exploring the inner world of experience and consciousness. So one of my aims in these discussions has been to explore the scientific understanding of areas such as thought, emotion, and subjective experience. I am very encouraged by the fact that science, and particularly neuroscience, is now increasingly paying attention to these matters, which have been neglected for so long. And I am pleased by recent developments in scientific methodology in these areas, in which the traditional scientific principle of objective third-party verifiability is now being expanded to include the domain of subjective experience. An example of this is the work in neurophenomenology by my late friend Francisco Varela. I have also had a long-standing interest in what scientific basis might be found for understanding the effects of contemplative practice and the deliberate cultivation of qualities, such as compassion, loving kindness, attention, and a calm mind. I have always felt that if science could show such practices to be both possible and beneficial, then perhaps they could even be promoted through mainstream education. Fortunately, there is now a reasonably substantial body of evidence in evolutionary biology, neuroscience, and other fields suggesting that, even from the most rigorous scientific perspective, unselfishness and concern for others are not only in our own interests, but also, in a sense, innate to our biological nature. Such evidence, when combined with reflection on our personal experiences and coupled with simple common sense, can, I believe, offer a strong case for the benefits of cultivating basic human values that does not rely on religious principles or faith at all. And this I welcome. Approaching secularism, that's what this next section is called. This, then, is the basis of what I call secular ethics. I am aware that for some people, in particular for some Christian and Muslim brothers and sisters, my use of the word secular raises difficulties. To some, the very word suggests a firm rejection of or even hostility toward religion. It may seem to them that, in using this word, I am advocating the exclusion of religion from ethical systems or even from all areas of public life. This is not at all what I have in mind. Instead, my understanding of the word secular comes from the way it is commonly used in India. Modern India has a secular constitution and prides itself on being a secular country. In India, an Indian using secular, far from implying antagonism toward religion or toward people of faith, actually implies a profound respect for and tolerance toward all religions. It also implies an inclusive and impartial attitude, which includes non-believers. This understanding of the term secular, to imply mutual tolerance and respect for all faiths, as well as for those with no faith, comes from India's particular historical and cultural background. In the same way, I suspect the Western understanding of the term comes from European history. I am no historian and certainly no expert on this subject, but it seems to me that as science began to advance rapidly in Europe, there was a move toward greater rationality. And this rationality involved, among other things, a rejection of what came to be seen as the superstitions of the past. For many radical thinkers from that time to our own day, the adoption of rationality has entailed a rejection of religious faith. The French Revolution, which expressed so many of the new ideas of the European Enlightenment, is a good example of this, with its strong anti-religious element. Of course, there was also an important social dimension to this rejection. Religion came to be regarded as conservative, tied to tradition, and closely associated with old regimes and all their failings. The legacy of this history, it seems, is that for more than 200 years, many of the most influential thinkers and reformers in the West have viewed religion not as an avenue to human liberation, but as an obstacle to progress. Marxism, one of the most powerful secular ideologies of the 20th century, even denounced religion as the opium of the people, with tragic consequences, as communist regimes forcibly suppressed religion in many parts of the world. It is a result of this history, I feel, that in the West, the idea of secularism is so often understood as being antagonistic toward religion. Secularism and religion are often seen as two opposing and mutually incompatible positions, and there is considerable suspicion and hostility between the followers of these two camps. While I cannot accept the suggestion that religion is an obstacle to human development, I do feel that in the context of history, anti-religious sentiments may be understandable. History teaches the uncomfortable truth that religious institutions and adherents of any denomination have been involved in exploitation of others at some stage or another. Religion has also been used as a pretext for conflict and oppression. Even Buddhism, with its doctrine of nonviolence, cannot escape this charge entirely. So when negative attitudes toward religion in the West or elsewhere are motivated by a concern for justice, they must be respected. In fact, one could argue that those who point out the hypocrisy of religious people who violate the ethical principles they proclaim and who stand up against injustices perpetrated by religious figures and institutions are actually strengthening and benefiting the traditions themselves. However, when assessing such criticisms, it is important to distinguish between criticisms directed at religion itself and those directed at the institutions of religion, which are two quite separate things. To my mind, notions of social justice are in no way contrary to the principles espoused by religion itself, because close to the heart of all the great faith traditions is the aim of promoting humanity's most positive qualities and nurturing such values as kindness, compassion, forgiveness, patience, and personal integrity. Secularism in India. For me, then, the word secular holds no fear. Instead, I am mindful of the founders of India's secular constitution, such as Dr. B.R. Ambedkar and Dr. Rajendra Prasad, the latter of whom I had the honor to know personally. Their intention in promoting secularism was not to do away with religion, but rather to recognize formally the religious diversity of Indian society. Mahatma Gandhi, the inspiration behind the Constitution, was himself a deeply religious man. In his daily prayer meetings, he included readings and hymns from all the country's major faith traditions. This remarkable example is followed in Indian public ceremonies to this day. The kind of religious tolerance Gandhi personified is nothing new in India. It has ancient roots, stretching back more than 2,000 years. It is revealed, for example, on inscribed pillars dating from the reign of Emperor Ashoka in the 3rd century BCE. One inscription contains the exhortation, "To honor another's religion, for doing so strengthens both one's own and that of the other." Furthermore, Sanskrit literature reveals a classical culture that was intellectually tolerant and rich in debate. In India, many philosophical positions have been subjects of great discussions since ancient times. Even positions that look much like modern materialism and atheism have an honorable and respected history in Indian tradition. Classical philosophical texts contain many references to the Charvaka school, whose adherents rejected any idea of God and the existence of any soul or afterlife. Other thinkers often vigorously opposed Charvaka views as nihilistic, but their radical materialism was nevertheless taken seriously as a philosophical position, and their founder was generally referred to as a rishi or a sage. Proponents of Charvaka ideas were also accorded a certain level of recognition and respect by some Indian rulers, many of whom were outstandingly tolerant of other religious faiths. The Muslim Emperor Akbar, who held dialogues with Hindus, Christians, and others, is one example of this tradition. Some time ago, I had an illuminating discussion on this subject with the former Deputy Prime Minister of India, Mr. L.K. Advani. He suggested that India's long-standing culture of tolerance, diversity, and debate is precisely what explains its marked success in maintaining a secular democracy. I am sure he is right. Today, the majority in India are Hindu, but many other religions are also well represented. India is home to the second largest Muslim population in the world, a fact not appreciated by many in the West. And there are also millions of Sikhs and Christians, as well as substantial Jain, Buddhist, Zoroastrian, and Jewish communities. I'm not sure if I said those two right. In fact, the ethics and religious minorities of India are almost too numerous to mention. In addition, hundreds of different languages are spoken in the country today. Amid this tremendous human diversity, it is a relatively common sight to see Hindu temples and Muslim minarets standing next to one another on city streets. In fact, most villages have more than one religion represented among their populations. I recently met a man from Romania who, for a research project, had visited numerous Indian villages. In telling me about a largely Muslim village in Rajasthan, in which there were only 3 Hindu families, he expressed surprise that these families lived there with no sense of fear or apprehension. His surprise, I thought, must be a result of the Western media's misleading portrayal of India's communal relations. There have been some severe and deeply regrettable incidents of communal violence in India, but it is a mistake to generalize these across the entire subcontinent. Notwithstanding such isolated incidents, India by and large maintains, despite its great diversity, a peaceful and harmonious society. Clearly, the ancient Indian doctrine of ahimsa, or nonviolence, has flourished and been adopted as a principle of peaceful coexistence by all faiths. This is a tremendous achievement and one from which other countries in the world can learn. Okay, so we are going to stop there. That's exactly half of chapter 1, and we will leave off talking about tolerance in an age of globalization. I'm interested to see when this book was actually published. See how right on the mark he was if this was written some time ago. He's written it in his old age, and I know, let's see. And of course, I think he's already passed away if I'm not mistaken, so obviously it can't be that new. 2012 is when this book, copyright of 2011. So yeah, I think he passed away not too long after that if I'm not mistaken. I honestly don't know very much about the Dalai Lama. Very basic things, but this book caught my attention because it's not talking about a certain religion, and those are the kinds of things I like to share on here. If you've noticed, I try to share things that are more universal, that all people can benefit from, and not just certain religions or very particular beliefs. So hopefully this reaches a broader audience and resonates with more people. So we'll stop right there and we'll finish up the rest of chapter 1 in the next video. I think I gave you plenty of information just right there. Lots to think of. A lot of good points that that he made here in just that first section. So until next time, please take care of yourself. Please take care of those around you. Have compassion for yourself, compassion for others, kindness and grace. Do the best that you can. in the moment that you're in, not comparing yourself to yesterday or an hour ago. We're different from day to day. Just remember those things. And I will see you again very soon for the last half of chapter 1 in our new book. Okay? Bye-bye.